Here we go. Welcome to Midlife Magic. So thankful that all of you wanted to hear about this information and you were excited to learn more about all things midlife because, once you get to late 30s, early 40s, things start to shift a little bit. And unfortunately, we celebrate and have a ton of information around puberty. We have a ton of information around pregnancy and post pregnancy and things that are going on. We have a lot of celebrations about it, and then after that it's kind of like, okay, what else? So we're going to talk about the history of midlife and how we can find our own magic on our own without feeling like you have to look to others. Like, we have the majority of our life, for a lot of people, we've looked to others to see what's best for us, and this is a very pivotal time in a woman's life where you can really kind of track where you are and where you're going and try to decide what things you need to do to get there. So let me share my screen here, and let me see. I'm going to share my screen so I can show you my pretty little slideshow. Here we go. All right. Let's present, shall we? Present standard. Yes. Dun, dun, dun. Mid-Life Masterclass. Purple's my favorite color, so this speaks to me, makes me think of Prince, R.I.P. Prince. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You are welcome to ask questions in the comment box if you want. If you're watching this later, welcome. We're so glad that you're able to take some time for yourself. And I really just want to, have you call some intention to this time that you are going to take for yourself. And why are you here? Like, what was the purpose of you joining tonight? And why are you taking the time to learn more? Now, based on the form that everyone filled out, a lot of people are wanting to know how to find more in their life. They know there's more passion available. They see people that are having fulfilled lives. They want better sex, but they're not really sure how to get there. And you get to create this midlife of yours. So I'm going to just give you the tools and kind of tell you about my journey and why I want to share it with you, why I want to share all this information. All right. So this is kind of a little timeline in my story. I have found in my life, stories are such a valuable tool to help me learn what's possible and also learn what is not what I want to do for my life. But I love hearing people's stories. And actually, Megan Campbell, thank you who's on this call right now. She was the first person to introduce me to podcast. And I think it was like 2016. And I somehow started on this personal growth train because I got to the age 40 and I started to look at what my life was like. And I kept feeling like the goalpost was being set further and further. And I would accomplish something and then I wouldn't really celebrate. It was like on to the next thing. I wasn't really present in my kids' lives as much as I wanted to be, even though I own my own business. And for those of you that don't know my story as far as my business goes, I've been with Pure Romance for almost 18 years, which has been an amazing platform to be able to have access to a lot of information about sexual health and sexual health educators. And so back to this time where I was like questioning a lot of things. I felt like I had a hard time regulating my emotions. I really felt like I was pointing the finger at a lot of different people as to why I wasn't happy and why I wasn't fulfilled. One of those people being my husband. There was a lot of codependency there. If you're not familiar with what codependency is, there's a really good book called Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. And I didn't really know what codependency looked like. But apparently, it's when you like to control other people's lives. So I learned to stop controlling other people's lives and focus on myself. And I'm not saying that this is, something that everyone experiences, but this was just something that I had learned to behave and learn to operate like that in a marriage. So fast forward to 2018, we moved to Tennessee from Colorado, and being able to be closer to family and have a little more flexibility with financial, it's not quite as expensive to live in Tennessee. So I had a little more time on my hands to dig a little bit deeper. I started going to therapy. I started learning what codependency looked like. I started to understand how my body worked, how my menstrual cycle was kind of giving me red flags as to why my hormones were out of balance. And I just kept reading, and I kept surrounding myself with people that were setting intentional personal growth. And I learned to set boundaries, and I listened to a ton of podcasts. And then I started to really embrace like my feminine energy and really embrace and feel embodied. So like feeling in my body and listening to my body. And I know that may be obscure to some of you, because for so long many of us have shut off from our bodies. We were told when we were little, to clean our plate even when we weren't hungry, or to sit in a chair for 7 hours a day at school. So many of us have been disconnected from our bodies and not really been able to access that pure like desire and pleasure that I like to say she is telling us she wants. And so if you see like in 2018, that's where I was just on my journey. I can look at these pictures and know distinct times where I was in a, just in a curious space. 2018, I was very curious. 2019, I had a lot more tools. That picture in 2019, I was like, I am on a roll here. I was learning about self pleasure. I was learning how to track my menstrual cycle. And I was learning what happens when you reach perimenopause. And I was like, I'm here for it. I am going to change this narrative. And then 2022, I have just really felt grounded. And over the past couple years, again, still continuing to grow. It's not like I've arrived anywhere. We can always keep growing, but I've just had this passion and this motivation to share this, decade long curiosity phase with other people, to be able to help their lives and support them through their journey, because I realize not everyone has access or time to be able to dig into all these different things. So that's a little bit about me. And we're going to talk about menopause. I know some people aren't there yet, but starting about, in your late 30s, the average onset is 41, perimenopause starts to creep in, and there's a lot of things that will start to pop up. I've got a little list of the different things that may show up in your life and in your health. And so we're just going to talk about like, this is something that is going to happen, right? Midlife, it gets a bad rap, but we are changing that narrative because it's a natural thing that we all go through, just like puberty. Basically, it's the reverse of puberty. So we're going back through, like, we may have some weird acne stuff. We may have some random chin hairs. As a matter of fact, my 14-year-old and I, we both were comparing chin hairs the other day. It was hilarious. I was like, oh, look at that. I'm going through the reverse of what you are. And it means the cessation of your menstruation for over a year. So when you have no period for a full year, that means you are postmenopausal. And that average age is 51. So perimenopause to menopause is a 10-year period of kind of a little roller coaster ride, especially if you don't know you're on a roller coaster ride of emotions and hormonal imbalance. But you can, with the support of, a friend squad, partner, whoever, you can get through this period, and on the other side, be like, whew, all right, here we go. Let's have some discovery time. So here's some signs that you may have entered into perimenopause. And I see someone's got a question. Oh, hopefully soon. The baby's your last hurrah. Yes. All right. Signs that you may have entered perimenopause. You have a heavier, longer flow. I noticed for me, I had weird body odor changes, like the smell, like my it was almost like the deodorant that I used was not effective anymore. Anxiety, brain fog, lack of confidence, weight gain without changes in diet or exercise. Now, this list together is like, are you freaking kidding me? I have to go through all that. But here's the thing, you're not going to have all of these things. These are just some highlighted things that you may experience through menopause or perimenopause. And it's exacerbated when you don't know what's going on and you start to feel resentment towards others because you're exhausted, or you may feel shame because you want to ask your OBGYN questions, but it seems like from what I have heard and what I have experienced, a lot of OBGYNs don't really have much to tell you until the other side of menopause, and they really don't have a whole lot of time to sit with you through that process. So again, there's a lot of resources that I'm going to give you at the end, and you can kind of do a little research and remain curious and figure out what you need. Now, we are going to find midlife magic for ourselves, but I want to just point out that part of why it seems so inaccessible to us is that it hasn't been portrayed in a very enlightening situation for years. I mean, if you think about midlife, it was considered a disease at best. Like, some of the treatments include cow ovaries. They started to have women like eat cow ovaries, and I don't know how. I don't know if it's cooked or powder. I don't even want to go that far, but that was something that they thought estrogen would help. And then testicular juice, ew, gross. Vaginal injections with lead acetate, morphine, bleach. Oh my gosh, that poor vagina, whoever had to have that happen. And it was really up to a very male based medical community. And of course, these men who have penises and don't have like the reproductive system don't understand how it operates because they don't have that equipment, right? So another thing that kind of took us back a little bit, even in 1963, there was a gynecologist, Robert Wilson, that published an article that said that untreated menopause was dangerous and left women at risk for hypertension, high cholesterol, all these different things. And he said it robbed women of their femininity and left them shells of their former selves. And he had a cure. And then, so it was almost like he set that up as, let's do this. And I've got estrogen that can help this cause, instead of getting to the root of the problem and figuring out, okay, what are these hormones doing? What about the emotional regulation? What about the physical symptoms that are having? So why did all this happen? Well, again, most medical research is done on bodies with a penis, and we just have a very different operating system than men do. We have what's called they have what's it called? Oh, I'm going to come back to that. What is it circadian rhythm. So they have a circadian rhythm. 24 hours is their cycle. And 24 hours is their cycle. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Oh, Jen's on here. Okay. Hi, Jen. All right. So 24 hours is their cycle. We have an infradian rhythm, which is a 25 to 32 day cycle. So when you think of it that way, they operate different because they build testosterone in the middle of the night, and they just like sleep. They get their sleep, and they usually have enough testosterone to get them through their day. But as you'll see here in a little bit, I'm going to tell you about the menstrual phase. Even if you don't have like the menstrual cycle anymore, this is important for you to understand so that you can kind of give yourself a little validation for maybe some things that didn't seem right growing up, or, half the population is going through this. And I know some of you on this call have teenage girls. So it's very important for them to understand how their body works so that they have autonomy. They can advocate for themselves when something is wrong or they feel like something's off. Give them that autonomy to kind of have a voice when it comes to their bodies, and it will help shift this whole narrative. So the other thing is, we just had a misunderstanding of endocrinology and hormones. And basically, we had a lot of men running, and we still do run our society. And it's based off of that masculine kind of perspective of doing things and fixing things and really not just being and understanding the feeling or emotion part of it. And this has totally played out into our experience today in sexuality and how we experience midlife. 6 out of 10 women say they weren't prepared for menopause. This was a survey done out of 10,000 women. Many women feel disconnected to their body. 6 out of 10 also say their sex lives are worse at 45 and up, and only 7% say it's better. But we're going to use some vocabulary in this conversation because 7%, that's hope, right? So I love this. So there's hope. So what is that 7% doing to make it better? So you're telling me there's a chance. Yes, I am. So what's the 7% doing to make it better? And I like to paint a silver lining. So if there's 7% that say that their sex life is better, and the majority of us have not had great sex education, much understanding of how our bodies work, then once we start talking about this, we'll have a better roadmap on how to find more pleasure. And the midlife narrative is changing. If you look at this, look, Sex and the City, their picture and Golden Girls are the same age. So obviously we are not painted in that picture of like the blue hairs all hanging out in the adult community. Now we have more women that are like, wait, I want this healthy pleasure. It's not a guilty pleasure. There's ageless arousal everywhere. There's pleasure available to me and it's my birthright. And this is another chance to celebrate. So I'm thinking like perimenopause parties, like I've been planning in my head. These things need to happen. And we need to celebrate this transition because this is kind of like the first couple of generations where it truly is midlife. Like if you think about like in the 50s and even the 1800s, midlife was like 25 or 30. Now we have longevity and we're able to be around a lot longer. And it's not just about retiring and hanging out on the front porch, in your rocking chair, although that does sound nice every now and then, but we have access to so much more than that if you want it. So my approach as far as a coach goes, and for those of you that don't know, my business, I still do pure romance parties where I go and talk about relationship enhancement products. But what I found was women wanted more information. A toy and a bottle of lubricant wasn't going to fix everything. Again, I'm trying to help people get to the root of the problem. So when you look at overall wellness, and this is what I use with my coaching clients, I do one-on-one and I do couples coaching and we have retreats. And then workshops like this. So the overall wellness approach is looking at everything. And if you look at this wheel of wellness, it is the hub. Like the hub is represented by your spiritual relationship. And I'm going to break into a couple of these different things, but then, you have your sexual piece of the pie, emotional, social, physical, mental, financial. And most of you in the Google form that you filled out said you had questions about emotional regulation, finding community, sexual frustrations, and physical frustrations. So I thought that was interesting. And I'm going to kind of touch on all these, but all of these are kind of interacting with each other. So if you are lacking in the sex department, and I've heard this before, like people will get a life coach and they'll focus on everything but the sex. And your sexuality is like, I think it's probably the best personal development work I have done because it's helped me reconnect to my body and truly know when I'm a hell yeah or a no thank you. It's helped me have better intuition. It's helped me have better connection with people, not just my husband, like just being able to connect with people on an intimate level, having better eye contact and meeting them with compassion and understanding that we were lacking a lot of knowledge when it came to sexuality. So that I'll spend a little more time on and a little bit more time on the emotional regulation as well. And we will also go back to this real quick. We're going to talk a little bit about values, gratitude, and affirmations, and how, and you all are going to get a copy of this at the end. I've got a couple of action items for you to create your own midlife magic. And it starts with this wheel of wellness and a future self journal, which you'll both get in your inbox. Woohoo! All right, so let's talk about what wellness is. Some people may have a little response, like a little visceral response if you pay attention. If you're like, oh, I'm so tired of that word. It is kind of an overused word, or maybe it's a triggering word to you because you feel like wellness looks like someone that is in a yoga outfit and their Lululemon outfit and they are super fit. They look like one body type. Now I will encourage you to look for more examples of all different body types. I'm getting super excited with more advertisements that have like all different bodied people. They look different. They have short hair, long hair. It's not just one type of body anymore. So I'm excited about that. I hope you all are too. But think about like, what have you been told about wellness? And I kind of think about this like the other day, right before Easter, my son marched in, my youngest son, and he was like, so the Easter bunny's not real, is he? And I was like, well, I mean, like, do you believe in the magic of Easter bunny? And he was like, no, tell me, like, he was like, I'm not going to have it. I need you to tell me the truth right now. What other lies have you told me? And he was like, what about Santa? And what about Jack the Elf? And we had this whole conversation and I was just like, oh my gosh, why do we tell our kids these things? And it was so magical for him all of these years. And now I don't blame him. He's pissed, so for the past couple of weeks, he's been like, so I guess you're the one that gave me the money for the tooth fairy then, huh? And I feel so much compassion for him because I felt the same way when I started to like break down the lies that I was told about sexuality and what wellness is and what is important to be a good human or a good girl or a good woman or a good wife. When I started to break down those preconceived notions that somewhere along the way I was given through my Catholic upbringing or media, it was like, with each one, it was almost like I had a backpack of lies that these adults didn't know any better. They didn't know what to say. So they would just say, abstinence is the best way, which, I mean, honestly, abstinence is going to definitely keep you from getting pregnant and getting STIs, right? But behind that, it would have been nice to have some information on when you have a loving, comfortable relationship with someone, these are the things you want to keep in mind. And also, self-pleasure is not a bad thing, and feeling proud of yourself is not a bad thing. And also, even though you're a girl, you might like neuroscience someday. And that's what I feel like also happened to me as I started to learn about bodies and the brain. And I was like, wow, this stuff is fascinating. And then I thought, why did I carry that message that girls don't like science for so long? I would have loved this stuff in school. And I'm thankful that I'm learning it now. So think about those myths and remain curious with any kind of like labels or, things, words that you say. And instead of saying, I'm not good at that, or I can't do that, start thinking about vocabulary, like, are wrinkles a bad thing? I mean, I earned them. I've had a lot of sun exposure, lots of fun on the beach. I was a lifeguard. It was like the best first job ever. I've had a lot of way too much fun smoking cigarettes in the 90s and going to shows. And are lines or wrinkles really that bad? Who says they're bad? Just holding that space to question the things that enter your mind. And when you can let go of some of those things, it's going to leave room for more pleasure. And you're going to have like this whole, it's like the Little Mermaid, a whole new world. You're welcome. Okay, moving on. So we're going to start. Oh, wait, let's see. Oh, yeah. We're going to start with the social wellness. Who is your support squad? Because you do not have to do this alone. And you'll see that I have on here close friends, therapist, coach, women's group, books, podcasts, pastor, spiritual guide. All these things are considered social. You'll notice I don't have your partner on here. Of course, your partner, if you have one, is an amazing gift to you. And you want to keep them abreast of all the things that you are encountering and the things that you're learning about, but they cannot be your full support. That is way too much pressure on them. And if you have a partner that was like mine, when I started my discovery, mine was not in a place to be taking on these new discoveries. And if I tried to talk at him with all this stuff, it would have been, and I think I did. I tried to gently encourage, not so gently encourage him to come along with me. And usually in heterosexual relationships, we're finding that women kind of lead that charge in the personal growth space. And that means lead the charge like with your personal self, not expecting them to be right behind you. They will follow on their own time. And if they don't, you can kind of face that situation when you come to it. But honoring yourself, like before it was we, it was me. There were, it's not like the situation with Tom Cruise and Renee Zellweger where he's like, you complete me. I mean, that kind of stuff really messed with our relationships and the ability to grow individually. Some of those rom-coms in the 90s, really in the early 2000s, just I feel like we deserve better. We deserve better narratives. And now I'm super thankful that Disney has, the frozen princesses and all that. And we're not Sleeping Beauty waiting for our Prince Charming to come and wake us up. Now it's us finding our squad. So close friends, if you're like, I don't have close friends, or maybe you have close friends, but they're not interested in the personal development space right now. Again, they are on their own journey, and doing for you is going to be the best thing that you can do right now. And you can find people. So when we moved here in 2018, I started with a therapist, and then I started to look for women's groups in my area, and I found a great group. It was called Creating Mindfulness. And a couple of my friends started this group, and it was once a month, and they would get together, they would do like a creative task, and then they would have a little meditation. So these people, I knew, okay, these people are trying to grow and learn. And so I found that group. And then I really started to call in, instead of saying, I can't find any friends, or I'm having a hard time finding friends. I just really meditated on like, I'm going to find, I know there's a group of friends out there, and I can't wait to find these people. And when I intentionally kept my eye out for these people, it turned out there were a group of women that I reconnected with from high school that we really didn't know each other in high school, but we've kind of reconnected. We all live in the area. We get together and we go hiking. They came to one of the retreats that I held. So that, if that's something that you're looking for in your future, call that in, manifest that, just like you do a good parking spot. We're manifesting stuff all the time based on what our words say. So what you think about, you bring about, right? So what kind of group are you going to call in? Okay, moving on. And I do have a resource list for all of you as well. I found that for a while, podcasts were a great friend. And during 2020, I found a lot of great Facebook groups that were just aligned with the things that I wanted to learn about, like the Enneagram. I'm in an Enneagram group. I'm in a sex coach group. So start calling those people in. And it's such an amazing force that holds you to a new standard and like opens up these new doors. So like if your bubble's this big, if it's a small bubble right now, it can just grow with each person that you meet. And of course, keeping those boundaries for when you feel depleted, when you hang out with someone, even if they've been a close friend for a long time, you may just need to kind of step away for a little bit and give yourself some space from that friend, not because you don't love them, but just because you need to make space for other people that are growing as well. Now let's talk about mental wellness, mental health, mental wellness. This has been a big topic here recently. And this is because we have so much information that we have not needed to function before. And we're taking in more information than we were created to process. This comes from, all the things that we have when it comes to our phones, just our phones. And I'm sure many of you have heard about how this affects your mental health. And if you have kids, you're probably a little even more aware because you're seeing how they respond to their devices. One thing that has really helped a lot of people is not turning on notifications, doing, a 30-day tech cleanse, things like that. And that's something that, if you feel drained or if you feel like you're doom scrolling, that may be something that you want to call attention to, and not in a shameful way, because this was designed to hold your attention. And just acknowledging that, like knowing like, okay, this is trying to take me away from my time with my partner, or take me away from me, from time by myself. And it may be a coping skill that you have that is not working. Like, instead of sitting with discomfort and sitting with pain, it's a lot easier to scroll through Instagram or go on Facebook and see what people are up to. So if you're really trying to look at, okay, who can I connect with, and, in connecting with that social wellness section, if you're wanting to connect with people on Instagram, pick up the phone and call them. Have a conversation with your friends in person. How's everyone doing on here? I don't see any. I see 4 people on here. We've got Jen, Meg. Is everybody doing good? You doing great? Okay, good. Good. Okay. So why is mental wellness important? I don't think I need to tell you all. I know you're super smart, but I think there might be a different level that we'll talk about here that might help paint a different picture. I think the biggest thing that I have learned is your mental health, your mental wellness, brain health. It's so important because there is a mind body connection, and your brain has these little, like, I like to think of them as like snow. Like, if you've ever lived someplace where you have to shovel snow, it's hard work. And you have like these little pathways in your brain that have been clear of snow for years. It's a much easier path to walk down. But then you don't necessarily need to go down those same paths because they're not leading you anywhere where you can grow and learn from. So when you retrain your brain, you can build new connections and new pathways to all of these different opportunities, but it takes work. And a lot of us are breaking some generational trauma and patterns that have been passed down to us. Both my husband and I realized, oh my gosh, like there's that SNL skit from the 90s where it was like she turned into her mother, and it's this couple and they're watching a show and she starts talking like her mom and she's like, why am I turning into a mom? And it happens like that. Well, we noticed when we had kids, there were some things that came up very naturally, especially during times of stress, that we would easily resort to. I was very reactive to my kids. I'd be fine for a while and then I'd just blow up, and I would drive fast. And that is not safe, to drive fast while you're angry. And there was one time where I pulled out of the driveway and I like just gunned it to go down. I was annoyed at my kid. And my oldest kid said, Mom, and at the stop sign, he said, Mom, I don't feel safe. I'm going to walk back home. And he jumped out of the car and I just sat there. I was just like, holy shit, what an incredible thing. Like, for him to be able to tell me that, I was so thankful. I took some time to chill out. I did some breathing. And this was before I really gotten into my work, but I did some breathing, went back to the house and I apologized and I thanked him for telling me how he felt and that he was advocating for himself. So, and guess where I learned how to drive fast when you're angry? Thanks, Mom. I learned a lot of amazing things from her. That was not one of them. She doesn't do that anymore. But we all learned, right? We all learned some really crazy stuff because our parents didn't have access to the information that we do now. So you are your own best healer. You know your body best. And mental wellness is important because your body is going to give your brain signals, and you can take those signals and figure out, make the connections. Like when this happens, I do this. So it's so important that you have that mental wellness. And faulty genes is a faulty narrative. So just because your your grandfather had Alzheimer's, or just because your parents had heart disease, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to get it. The genes, as far as epigenetics goes, they have found that genes play less of a role than your handed down habits and behaviors that you picked up from your family. So when people often say, well, my parents have diabetes or heart disease or whatever, some people will just kind of throw their hands up and throw caution to the wind because they're like, that's just how it is. And they continue to eat the same traditional foods that their family did. And of course, they're going to get that heart disease or they're going to get diabetes. So for you to be able to have that responsibility and play around with, what foods work for you, and takes a lot of mental power. And then when you know better, you do better. And your mental wellness is going to affect every part of your overall wellness. Now, this kind of plays into what we were talking about those pathways that are so easily, accessible. And those can be the pathways of shame or guilt, shame of your body. I was reading a friend of mine today. She posted something about, you know, having a female body and having double D's by the time she was in 8th grade, and being so ashamed of her body, and hearing from adult men that she needed to cover up, but then also seeing like these Victoria's Secret models and just these mixed messages, and the shame that she had with her body. Those lies that were told to her, she carried on. So, as you're remaining curious through finding your own midlife magic, think about the things that you've been told. And if it doesn't sit right with you, you know, taking a minute to look at that and really decide if it's true or not. Like, can you prove that it's true? Most of the time, you can't. And you just have these weird people living upstairs in your brain. It's like this cast of characters that's telling you what to do. So, some things that can help, and the positive affirmations are huge. When you start to go from those lies and start to use positive affirmations, as cheesy as it sounds, this was a part of my healing journey when I first started to write 10 things I was thankful for every day. The sunshine, my cup of coffee, my fuzzy socks, my fur baby, my kids, whatever it was. Just knowing that I had to look for those things that I was grateful for, and also have these positive affirmations at the ready. It was almost like I had ammunition in my belt, ready to go. So that if any lies were coming my way, I would be like, pew, pew. My size doesn't determine my worth. I am at home in my body. I am doing my best. I choose to be happy and to love myself today. Where there's a couple, oh, I am worthy of all the pleasure. All the pleasure. That was one thing I had a hard time with as a, daughter of someone who was very busy. And I adopted this busyness, like busyness equals quality or equals value. My body equals my value. So therefore I should work really hard, work my ass off in the gym or whatever. There's so many things. I am free of worry and regret. I'm becoming confident every day. So picking a couple of these out, you can Google positive affirmations and you can write them on your mirror. Or again, that wheel of wellness is going to be super handy. If you print that out, write down your affirmations, write a couple down every day. Our marriage grows stronger every day. That was a big one for me because we were on the edge. I didn't share that in our story, but in 2019, in that picture where I was like, woo, where I was free, I had put the kibosh on sex for a while. I was like, you know what? I don't want to have sex until the new year with you. Not because I don't love you, but I really need this separation so that I can understand how I'm entering into this relationship. And I need to understand how I operate as me because I hadn't looked at it that way before. I looked at it as I was responsible for my husband, but I'm not. I'm responsible to him. He's responsible to me, but we aren't responsible for each other's feelings or for each other's actions. Thank goodness, right? Okay. So, some other things to think about with mental wellness and mental health as you start this journey of creating your midlife magic, there's some things that may get in the way and some things that are going to help. So, you're going to find that there's a lot of definitions that pop up. And trauma is another word that comes up a lot. And for some people, they're like, what does that even mean? It's basically an experience where someone lacks the ability to emotionally regulate and process and then release the event, causing a dysregulation to the body's nervous system. Trauma impacts each person differently due to their own conditioning and modeled coping skills, and it can't be disqualified or measured. So there's small traumas, big traumas. There's traumas of seeing like of being in an accident, and then there's the trauma of seeing an accident or just anything that you're not ready to process. There's way more sexual trauma than we know. 1 in 6 men are sexually abused and 1 in 4 women, and that's just what's reported. So those things will weigh on your emotional regulation. And for a lot of kids, they have a hard time processing, especially when they are sitting in chairs for so long during the day. If they have a traditional school setting, that can have an effect on a kid and their nervous system and being able to, when they're dysregulated, that's why some kids act out and they're not really sure how to process what's happening at home if they're in an abusive home. And it can show up when you are, when you're being intimate with someone. If you've had sexual abuse before, it can show up where you disassociate and you may look out the window, or you may just completely feel disconnected from your body and not connected to your person. You're just going through the act of sex and not really connecting. If that's something that's happened to you before, there's a really good book. I'm not sure that I have it on the resources page, but I can provide that for you for sure. So when that happens, your survival brain, it's a nervous system state of hyperfocus on perceived threats that results in black and white thinking, panic, and emotional short-sightedness. And as a healthy, like quote, like I say healthy, what's a better term? As a person that lives in society, if you live in a community, you can't always process all the trauma. You can't be like, ooh, okay. All right. Okay. Sometimes we shove it down and it just keeps like piling on itself. And when that happens, I like to think of it like, I don't know if you all can see me or not. Can you see me? Because I know you can see this slideshow, but I've got a visual here. Okay, good. When you think of every trauma, like you have like this, almost like like a gas tank. And if you, or I think of it as like a balloon. Anyways, I'll come up with a metaphor. But in my mind, I think, okay, when something happens, you lose your fuel. And like if there's a little trauma, like you almost get sideswiped, you get yelled at by someone, and you don't resolve the situation. You were sexually abused as a kid, that takes you way down. So a lot of us are operating in the survival brain. And when that happens, you have so much cortisol in your body that's built up that it will come out in short spurts. And for me, that was the short spurt of driving really fast or yelling at my husband. Like there was one time where I was just like, blah, or yelling at my kids, reacting, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. And for him, it was the same. He would shove so much down because if you are familiar with the Enneagram, he's the peacekeeper. And so he would just like want to keep everything at bay, even if that meant he was just like, he was there physically, but not mentally or emotionally. He would just shove the stuff down. And then every now and then it would just blow up, usually on one of the kids. And he has since worked through that trauma and worked through the emotional release. And there's different ways that you can do that. You can, and if this is, I know this is probably happening to a lot of you, but it can be released through there's some modalities that you can use, like in therapeutic settings. If you want information on that, let me know. But there's also ways to, like, if you work out and after you work out, if you start paying attention to your body, you'll feel like these tinglies. Like that's the shit leaving your body. You're like the stuff that you don't need anymore. And sometimes women will and men too, after they have sex, they have that release. And I like to say we can squirt two ways, one from your G spot, one from your eyes. And that's just because you're just releasing stuff. And that's why sex is such a good thing, not only for connection, but it provides a safe space to just release all that stuff that you're holding on to. um, so I've done that several times since working through this process. Another time, you shake, like sometimes your body will shake because your body goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And if you think about a deer that gets hit by a car and it freezes and then it shakes and takes off, that's kind of like how most animals will operate. They will play dead, and then like a possum will play dead, and then they'll shake it out and leave. So a lot of stuff like belly dancing and Zumba, where you're moving your body, just having your own little dance party in your house to just get it out. That kind of stuff is super helpful. Okay, I've spent a lot of time here. So now this is, and let me know if you all have any questions about this too, but the consciousness is the present state of awareness in which choice becomes possible. So knowing that you are not your thoughts, you have more control and you are in charge of more than you are giving yourself credit for. So you are in charge of a lot of different things. You're in charge of how you respond to people, whether or not you react to them, because we've got enough stuff to work through as it is. So when you claim the stuff that's yours and then deflect the stuff that's not yours, that leaves room for more pleasure, more magic. As you're doing this work, you'll notice the term shadow self. These are the undesirable parts of ourself that are repressed or denied as a result of conditioning and shame. So a lot of times that's like my ego will pop up and I'm like, ooh, hello, shadow self. And the monkey mind is that constant stream of mental chatter that runs through the human mind. So that may be either the monkey mind or the crazy woman in the attic that keeps telling you these things that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing. And behind every should is shame, but also behind every should, it could be a could too, right? Like, so shouldn't or should is shame, but sometimes you can sit with that and go, I should do this. Well, I could, but is it important to me? I mean, there's a lot of conversations that you can have with yourself about these things, but trying to decipher if instead of just subconsciously thinking these things and doing these things, you really start to break stuff down in your head. And then neuroplasticity is what we were talking about, the ability of the brain to form new connections and pathways and to change and adapt the way its circuits are wired based on our experiences. So basically that snow shovel analogy, you're just rewiring your brain, upgrading the system, because you don't need the stuff that you needed when you were 6 to keep you safe. You need some new tools to get you through this midlife period of self-discovery and being that matriarch in your community and in your family that can be the wise person that can help support others on your own accord, on your choice, not on anyone else's. So good. All right. So we were talking about emotions. How's everyone doing? Are we still here? Are you still with me? Is this making sense? Okay. Awesome. All right. And I think we said we were doing this till 8:30, so we got 30 minutes. And as always, I'm like, oh, I want to share this and I want to share that. And if I don't get to everything, I can always do a take two, but I'll share some other ways with you that you can learn this information outside of this little workshop. So, emotional regulation. Whenever you get that feeling, and I just told you about an emotional regulation time with my kids. When my kid hopped out, told me how he's feeling. Now he identified it before I did. Now there was another time where I was driving with both my kids in the back. They were fighting. Surprise. I know my kids are the only ones that fight, right? They were arguing and I got so annoyed, but I pulled over instead of continuing to drive. I pulled over and I stopped in a safe place. I got out of the car very calm. I walked up the hill, did some deep breathing, like deep breath in through the nose, hold it out the top, filling up the belly, releasing. I just sat there and did a few breaths and I got back in the car and they were like, "Are you okay, Mom?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good." And they were like, "Are you mad?" I was like, "No, nope, I'm good. You guys good?" They were like, "Yeah." They were just like, "What is going on?" But I identified what is it that I'm feeling. And I was frustrated. I was annoyed, but I wasn't hurt. I witnessed how I immediately reacted was I did want to yell at them. I wanted to like show them that I was mad by driving faster or braking harder. And I paused. I actually pulled over and took a moment to do some deep breaths. I let that pass, that feeling pass. And I witnessed how the emotion passed just like a cloud. It was like frustration, anger, whatever, and let it go. And knowing that feelings are temporary. Oh my gosh. What a concept. And I have been very proud of me. No shaming. My mantra, I can handle difficult emotions. I am proud of me. And for a Gen Xer, pride was something that was usually squashed, at least in my experience. I mean, we didn't have as many trophies and pats on the back as I feel like we give our kids now. And it just wasn't a thing. So anytime that I felt proud, I felt like, oh, I should be a little more humble. But now I am really damn proud because I'm breaking these generational patterns so that my kids don't have to deal with that. They are not going to pass that on with my grandkids the way that I responded to them. Or, Steve has been working really hard on deep breaths and he'll often say the story I'm telling myself is, and that's been huge in our relationship because it's like I'll say, "Okay, so the story I'm telling myself is," and he's like, "Okay." Like that's like our on guard. And sometimes if he's not in a place to receive that, he'll be like, "Hey, can I talk to you about this a little bit later?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally," because I want him to be in a place to receive it. And so it's funny if we heard ourselves talking like this 10 years ago, we would have been like, "What's that all about?" Because we would avoid all the hard stuff. All right, so tapping into our spiritual wellness real quick. I just want to define this because it can be triggering for some people because they think about religion and there is such a thing as religious trauma where there was a lot of shame and blame and fire and brimstone and not as much responsibility, just relying on prayer, praying for the things that they needed. So, the spiritual wellness is defined as expanding a sense of purpose and meaning in life, including one's morals and ethics. It may or may not involve religious activities. There are religious people that have a strong relationship to their spiritual wellness. There are some people that are spiritual but don't have any religious affiliation. And really, it's your sense of purpose, knowing that you were made, you have a divine, you're a divine creation that is perfectly made. You are here for a reason, for a purpose. You have a dharma. Um, you have this universe creation, whatever you want to call it, the source that is guiding you, and it lives within you. And finding that can be super powerful. Another way to find that is through that sexuality as well. Like there are some really powerful spiritual things that can happen. Stella agrees. Oh my gosh, these dogs. Okay. So that brings us connecting to you. Look at your vulva. We're going to talk about anatomy really quick because some of us did not learn all the basic things about anatomy. And a little bit about the arousal process and how you can try a little different stimulation in an effort for pleasure, not just for orgasm. You know, taking that goal off of self pleasure can help you learn to just feel what's going on with your body. Oh my gosh, Megan, I have to thank you again because you also introduced me to OMGYes, which is a great website that provides so many different ways of self pleasure. It's crazy. I had been doing pure romance for 16 years, and I think she sent me this link, and it's through Indiana University, which is the largest sexual health research center in the nation. And they interviewed thousands of women and their favorite ways of self pleasure. And they have videos that show you different ways. And I mean, they are very well done. It's not like, typical pornography where they're like, I like it when I do this. It's women just talking about their pleasure practice and how you can try these different techniques with just your hands and a bottle of lubricant. And I also want to encourage you all to, like, if you rely on your toy a lot, like if you're on a medication that's like anti-anxiety, I know that can have a major effect on the nerve endings and how much desire and libido you have. But putting the toy away for a little bit just to see how your body responds to different types of touch can be so revealing into how much pleasure is out there for you. So this is Vivian. Let me stop sharing for a minute so you can see her all proud. There she is. Okay, so this is Vivian. And when you are not aroused, let me show you the anatomy parts real quick. So you've got the outer labia here, the vagina is here. This is the vulva. So the vulva, for some people, they have called it a vagina because that's what they were told. But that's like calling your face your throat. Doesn't make sense. So this is the vulva. This is the vagina. This is the clitoral hood, and underneath that is the clitoris, and it's got 8 to 10,000 nerve endings in it. It's the only part of the human body that's made for pleasure, and there's so many different ways to kind of give stimulation to that area. You can use. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so this is the clitoris. You only see this much, but it's actually shaped like a wishbone, and it extends internally 5 to 6 inches long. So if you see this, this little clitoris, hey, it looks like a little alien. Da, da, da. Like it could be like a little Broadway show. Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Hello, my ragdoll pal. If you extend this, it would be 5 to 6 inches, and it would be like a penis. And that's, before the penis grows. I think it's at 6 weeks, the penis starts to grow, and the labia is what the testicles are. So the same skin on the labia is the same skin on the scrotum. So if you have a partner with a penis, you can be like, hey, listen, my labia is like your scrotum. So whatever you like, see, like however you like to be touched in that area, try it on my labia to try something different. And this right here, the clitoris, is inside. Like I wish it fit in here perfectly, but you can kind of get the idea. It's like this would be the head of the clitoris here. The glans clitoris is like the head of the penis. And the first 2 inches are full of nerve endings. So that's why it feels really good. That first 2 inches of the vagina, when you have that first bit of penetration, for most people, it feels really good because of those nerve endings. And that's one little technique that OMGS talks about is just kind of entering that first 2 inches. And I think it's called shallowing. Remind me if you know this one, Megan. But you just kind of go in a little bit and not all the way in, and just kind of go around the inner part of the inner labia. And it feels fantastic. And we need, 14 to 15 minutes on average to feel aroused and ready to go. Now, if you have, it's like a scoot dance. Doot, 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 doot. So if you have, now I forgot what I was going to say. Okay, so if you have lubricant, yeah. Oh, if you are on medications, that's what I was gonna say. You'll need more time to feel aroused and ready to go. And what happens when you feel aroused is your body, your vaginal walls actually open and expand as if to say, like, come on in. Welcome, welcome to the vaginal canal. That's what it's saying. And if it doesn't have time to open and do the vaginal tenting, for some people it can be kind of painful. So depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, sometimes it's easier, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. But you get the idea. The other cool thing is that up and in, whoop, whoop, right here, is what some people refer to as the G spot. It's really the underside of the clitoris right here. So you're just kind of doing this. And that part right there, it may feel like you have to go to the bathroom, but if you wait that feeling out, you'll feel like a warming wave-like sensation, gives you goosebumps, and you may have like a little clear fluid. That part is super sensitive, and you also may have like a clear fluid. That is what I was talking about, the squirting. So you can squirt from your eyes. When you have that release, you can also squirt the from the G spot. And some people think it is the similar to the prostate. So we kind of have like a prostate, but not really. Okay, that's your little anatomy lesson. You can learn more. Okay, let me see what else. Oh, let's see. I'm going to share my screen again. So, looking at your vulva, this can be a powerful experience. Getting a mirror, kind of checking stuff out. The labia are they're sisters. They're not twins. So even though they look alike, one may be a little longer, one may be a little darker in shade, but that doesn't mean that anything is wrong. It's your vulva. It's a beautiful thing. So enjoy exploring that. Now, even though some of you are like, if you're like Megan, who's pregnant, you're like, I don't have a menstrual cycle, but if you don't have one, this is still important to know so that you can share this information with others. And also because you can apply this post-menopausal to syncing with the moon. So I love that the moon has the full moon into the waxing and waning. And that is because we are on that 20, almost the same cycle as the moon. Before there was artificial light, we typically would sync with the moon. And that's why they would have the red tent where the women would go and gather and have like the red tent ceremony. And they would have their time during menstruation, 3 to 7 days, where they would have their time to reflect and gentle movement. It was a time for renewal. And man, I wish we had that now. Like just to go hang out in a, big lodge with a bunch of other people that are menstruating so that you can have like that reflective time. That may be a really good business model. So that's 3 to 7 days. And that time is a lot like winter. So it's a time to spend inside, inner processing, renewal, gentle movement like yoga or small, short walks, things like that. Then after you come out of that, your progesterone starts to go up and your follicular stage is 7 to 10 days. This energy is more dynamic. It's a great time for creativity, for brainstorming, for physical stamina, for you to pick a couple of projects. What I found before I knew about my menstrual cycle is during this time, I would have so many ideas. I'd be like, oh, we should do this. We should do this. We should. And it was like, I had so many that I would do nothing. I'd end up doing like part of 1 or 2. Now, during this stage of menstruation, I will look ahead and say, okay, this follicular stage, I'm going to focus on creating the curriculum for the midlife magic time, for the midlife magic class. I'm also going to focus on my podcast guests, and I'm going to uh, do one personal project, whatever that will be. And this is also a time where you don't have a ton of lubrication, so it's good to have this on hand, the lubrication on hand. Then, oh, and then uh, physical stuff, Zumba, high intensity interval training. Those are great classes. Strength training. It's a really good time to be dynamic in whatever kind of exercise you want to do. Then ovulation. It's kind of like summer, 3 to 4 days. Your pheromones are heightened. You have expressive energy. This is a great time for networking, for communication. You're able to like verbalize your ideas a lot better. Guess what time it is during my menstrual cycle right now? I planned this accordingly. I'm going to be ovulating tomorrow, the next day. And there's a reason for that. I recently had somebody ask me to be interviewed on their podcast, and they gave me options for dates. And I picked the one where I was ovulating because I don't want to be sitting there menstruating and trying to come up with the words when I'm ovulating, and my face is more symmetrical. I'm more able to communicate my thoughts. This is also a great time for productivity, teamwork, running, more HIIT workouts, high impact, group activities, and networking. Then you head into your luteal phase, which is fall, and this is 10 to 14 days long. This is the longest time. And this typically it doesn't have a great reputation. Like PMS has been made to be of the devil, but it actually, when you embrace this time, it is a great time for problem solving, for nesting. That is when I will organize my closet. I will purge some things. I will do a lot of like, I'll start to like close projects up, so like probably next week I'll be reaching out to you all and being like, hey, want to make sure you got your how, like, see how your wellness wheel is going. What are your affirmations? So I'll probably be doing that during that time. And this is a time where you have more assertiveness. This is a good time for vinyasa yoga, Pilates. You start to kind of wind down in your intensity and low resistance workouts. There's also a ton of great support for your hormones during this time. And I cannot tell you enough about this book. It's called Woman Code. And this woman owns she's a holistic health counselor, and she founded the Flow Living Center. She was told that she was going to have PCOS for the rest of her life, and she was going to have to be on medication, and she was going to be overweight and have problems with acne. And she was studying to be an OB/GYN at Johns Hopkins. And she just was like, that is unacceptable. I will not. She was like in her early 20s. And I have so much, like, I can't imagine telling the doctor at that age, for me, sorry, that's not happening. Like, I can't imagine. But she knew there had to be a different way. And she's found different diets and supplements and things like that, herbs and things that can support you during this time. Now, the reason why I'm spending so much time on the menstruation cycle is once you understand this, you can also connect to the moon cycle. I think I already said that. But if you still have your cycle, one of the best things you can do going into midlife is to track your cycle so that you have a little more energy and understanding and awareness of where you are. And the new app that I'm using is the In the Flow app. No W. I'll share this with you, but it has been such a gift because you can also have this go to your partner, and it will give them a heads up like, hey, here's a win. Here's a way to win with your partner this week. She's in her luteal phase. She may be a little more assertive. And so these are some things that you can do to support her. Meanwhile, every week I tell Steve where I'm at, in my cycle. And for probably about the first 6 months, he was like, okay, like he didn't know what that meant, but just me telling him. And now he's finally put the pieces together. He's like, oh, okay. So this week, like you're ovulating, huh? And I'm like, yeah, that's right. So we know that there's not going to be a lot of work for desire or for natural lubrication or, that kind of thing. Okay. And a couple of things. I just have two more things before we close this out. Look at that. 7 minutes to go. Woohoo. All right. The other thing is, for some of you, you had put that you had low libido. And I want to encourage you to read Emily Nagoski's Come As You Are. And there's a really great workbook that goes with that helps you understand how your body works and how you may be holding on to some ideas about sex that are no longer serving you. And it's a great journaling project. It's like you learn and you journal and there's so much. Journaling was super helpful to me. There's no wrong or right way to do it. When I was super angry and frustrated, I would just write, get it all out so it's not in your head. But she talks about how there's a responsive desire. It's in response to something, an intention. It's something scheduled. It's in response to a massage, or, it is a response to a stimulus. And then there's that spontaneous, in the heat of the moment kind of sex that you have sometimes. If you've been with your partner for a long time, it most likely doesn't happen because sometimes we just don't have a whole lot of room for desire. And that's what happened with people during COVID, is that there was a lot of divorce. There was a lot of reconnect when people realized kind of how they could play that dance of leaving room for desire, but then also using their time intentionally to have more connective sex and more sexploration in their lives. But relying on that spontaneous, in the heat of the moment, like it's going to happen. Like, I guess, like you walk by each other in the hall and you're like, oh my gosh, you start making out and it happens. It's just not likely to happen as much, especially if you've been together for a long time. So what I encourage my clients to do is to schedule stuff. This can go for self-pleasure as well. Like as you're looking at your week, and I have something called a relationship check-in, where you check in. Where are you at in the menstrual cycle? What's the weather like this week? Are you going to do something fun and playful together? Are you going to have a date night? Are you going to take care of where all the kids need to go? And what kind of fun, intimate activity do you want to do? Do you want to try something new? Do you want to watch a video together to learn about like conscious kink or maybe a little bondage or whatever it is? I highly recommend the first two, especially the first two episodes of Sex, Love, and Goop. It's fascinating. There's the erotic blueprints. I decided not to talk about that tonight because I knew I would go on and on about it. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to leave you hanging. And then we are going to close this out with your action items. So I hope this provided you with some knowledge about your body and about how there are a lot of things that you don't know about it, because we didn't even find the clitoral complex that was inside of us until the 1990s. I am older than the knowledge of this internal structure right here. That wasn't found until the 90s. They just thought this was the clitoris right here. So thinking of that, you are on your own little discovery session, your own little discovery journey. So where are you going? And I want to invite you to take time to just be. And another thing I wanted to talk about tonight, but I decided to just leave it off, was the feminine and masculine energy. And masculine is more doing, and feminine doesn't have anything to do with gender, because a lot of us are doers. We just want to do the thing, fix it. And sometimes we need to just relax into our feminine energy and just be. You will find answers in the stillness. And, for some people that are like, okay, so you're going to tell me I have to track my cycle now. That's one more thing I have to do. By doing these things, it will provide more space and more understanding of where you're going, and you will be able to have clarity on the tools that you need to get there. So yes, I'm going to ask you to do less, and it's going to give you more in the end. once you find that, because you're not walking uphill. You're not like, you're just going to find this place where you can just find the answers in the stillness. I'm going to send you something called the Future Self Journal. I'll show it to you here. It's the one, it's on my right. I don't know if it's flipped for you all. It says My Future Self Journal. But this is painting the picture of what your future self looks like. It's not tethered to the past. It's a clear picture of where you're going to go. And I want it to help you feel excited and nervous at the same time. And, there's different prompts, like choosing 2 to 3 areas of your life. Find from the perspective of your future self, what does your life look like? So you are, um, like, for me, I painted a picture of my marriage. I was really intentional about wanting that to be like the thing that I was working towards. I know I had to work on myself to get there, but I really focused on, what did that look like? And I would meditate on it, and I would really focus on holding my partner to a higher standard, like seeing him as if he was already there. And by painting that picture and seeing him, like we are on the back porch reading together and having our morning coffee, or we are having like this incredible, intimate getaway together where we are just enjoying being connected and having sex, and having all the connection, and just really having so much awareness of what the other person needs so that we can support them, but we also have our own friends and we have our own time. Like, I was very, very intentional about what that looked like. And lo and behold, it could have gone one way or could have gone the other way, but we are in a much better space right now because I have really focused on that and really worked towards that and shared that with him. I remember sharing that with him, and he was just like, okay, cool, thanks. Like, he didn't really know what to do with it. And I think he wanted to see that before he really like celebrated, like, cool, that sounds amazing. But one of the things I remember saying is, I am leaving space for you to figure out your stuff. I'm not nagging you to try to do things that you're not ready for. And he was just like, whew, okay, all right. So 2 years later is about when it finally all came together. Okay, so that's your future self. Then hang the wheel of wellness where you can see it. Fill out your values, your affirmations, and gratitude. And 3, I'm here to help guide you. So if you're looking for upcoming circles, like we have a full moon circle that I host here. The next one is going to be on May 17th. Although I just found out the full moon and an eclipse is going to happen on the 15th. So I may change that. We just did our first full moon circle last month, or this past month, and it was great. We just had some time to share, set our intentions for the next moon cycle, and we had paddle boards and kayaks, and we went out on the lake. So if you don't have one in your area, you are welcome to travel to ours in Louisville, Tennessee. But if you don't have one, just start one. I'll give you the questions. It's free for me. This is something that I value and it brings me joy. So I'm going to keep doing it. And next time we are going to have my friend Jen, who does like creative, where she helps adults basically come out with their creativity, and she's going to do a little project with us. So I'm super excited about that. Also, I do host workshops and retreats, and I'm going to have a Midlife Magic retreat in June in Louisville, Tennessee, at a lake house there. It's a place where you can come and work with other women with intention. And those, I'm very specific about who's able to come. We'll only have 8 people total there. And I interview each person and make sure that their expectations and their desires are in alignment with the other people that are going to be there. So if that's something that you want to find out about, it's great food. We do yoga. We'll do some more creative projects, but we would love to have you there here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And then coaching. I do one-on-one coaching and then couples coaching as well. So if those are some things that you want to have access to, please message me and I will take care of you. Other places you can find me are on my Instagram, which is at Shannon Hamaker, ShannonHamer, as in Mary, Aker. And you can always message me on Facebook. And I do have that Sexually Speaking with Shannon podcast where lots of information on there too. So I hope this was helpful. And I'm going to close this out now. But if you all are, for those of you that are on here, if you have any questions, did you have questions for me? I love you too, Megan. We need, like, once that baby's here, we'll have to have some get togethers in Chattanooga. Have the full moon circle there. Yeah, buddy. That's right. Who else do we still have on here? Oh, let's unmute Holly. Holly, you still here? She's on here. She probably can't figure out how to unmute. All right. Well, I'm going to close this out then. If you all don't have any questions, I'm at least going to stop the recording.
I'm here. Did I figure it out?
You did. Did you have any questions?
Yeah. No, just listening, taking it all in.
Good.
Thank
Okay. Was this helpful? I know it's going right along with coaching for you right now, right?
Yeah, it was a lot similar to the coaching, and we kind of went a little deeper without me interrupting and talking. So it was nice just to listen.
You're not interrupting and talking. You always have some good insight, and it's your coaching call, so you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will